They wheeled in a sheet cake that said, "Our hero," in Comic Sans. I just saved the company from losing its biggest logistics client by rewriting the entire vendor routing system over a single weekend. 32 hours straight, fueled by cold brew and a 9-year-old laptop fan that screamed like a banshee. I hadn't showered, hadn't slept, hadn't spoken to a soul outside of Slack. But I hit deploy. The order backlog vanished and the client's COO sent a one-line email. "Keep her." That was Tuesday. By Thursday, they gave me a sugar coma and a hoodie 2 sizes too big, with the logo embroidered in thread thinner than their promises. No bonus, no raise, not even a title change. Just a lot of public back patting and a VP who called me our little wizard behind the curtain. I smiled for the photo op, holding the cake knife like it was a scalpel. You want to motivate the team behind these stories? Hit that like button. Subscribe. It actually helps more than you think. And maybe, just maybe, someone else like me will learn how to get what they're owed. Anyway, I went back to my cube, wiped frosting off my keyboard, and kept working. I wasn't the culture type, never had a lunch buddy, never went to trivia night, never decorated my desk. My comfort zone was root access and a good pair of headphones. I didn't gossip, I documented. I didn't ask for help, I backed up everything twice. Half the systems that kept the company alive were things I built on nights and weekends when no one else wanted the ticket. Too niche, they'd say, or it doesn't scale. Then it would break, and I'd fix it quietly. Repeatedly, like gravity. There, constant, invisible, until someone tries to ignore it. The platform wasn't flashy, but it worked. Invoice reconciliation, inventory routing, shipment scheduling, vendor tiering, tax flagging, SLA alerts. I'd built it modular, elegant, stable. You could cut off 3 limbs and it'd still crawl. They called it the stack, like it was one thing. It wasn't. It was mine. My code, my structure, my architecture. And buried in the fine print of my original offer letter, right above the signature line, was one dusty little clause no one ever bothered to revisit. Prior work shall remain the sole intellectual property of the employee unless explicitly assigned. I never assigned it. Not once. They thought I was a pack mule. I was the architect of their survival. Some nights I'd sit in my apartment, pour a finger of rye, and stare at the copyright certificate on my wall. It was ugly, official, and ironclad. I mailed it the day after I first deployed the module that auto-resolved their shipment bottlenecks. Never said a word about it, never bragged, never even hinted. Because I wasn't building a product. I was building leverage. There were weeks I didn't see daylight, sprinting to stabilize their system before quarterly reports. I watched execs fly to Bermuda while I patched their pipeline from a bus stop. I got birthday cards signed by interns I'd never met. One manager once sent me a Starbucks e-gift card with the subject line, "Thanks for the hustle." I bought a black coffee and forwarded the receipt to my tax folder. They wanted loyalty. I wanted something that could survive amnesia. The final straw wasn't big. It never is. It was a town hall. The CFO was grinning about record savings and someone asked about bonuses. He laughed and said, "Well, some folks are motivated by more than money, right?" And then he looked at me on camera in front of 140 people like I should be grateful to star in their slide deck. So I smiled. Not with my mouth, with my eyes. The kind of smile that means you've reminded me exactly what I'm worth. That night, I started cleaning up my source tree, timestamped everything, created a separate vendor profile, registered the newest module under my name. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever does when the system's working. But one day, it wouldn't be. And when that happened, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd raise an invoice. They scheduled the bonus meeting like it was a spa day. Outlook invite, no agenda, subject line, celebrating wins and looking ahead. I wore a decent blouse, actually brushed my hair,
Even brought a notebook, like some part of me still believed they might act like adults. But I knew better the second I stepped into that beige, oxygen-deprived conference room and saw Derek, the new VP of Ops, leaning back like he'd just finished neutering a golden retriever. He'd been with the company all of 7 weeks and was already throwing around phrases like vision hygiene and optimize the org chart. The guy had startup stubble, venture capital veneers, and the kind of self-confidence you only earn by failing upward enough times that gravity just gives up. And now, here he was, legs crossed, holding a LaCroix, ready to piss on my contributions while smiling through bleached teeth. "Before we talk numbers," he said, flipping through a printout that I recognized immediately, the year-end performance summary I wrote for myself because HR didn't have bandwidth, "I just want to acknowledge how critical your work has been to our infrastructure this year. Honestly, foundational." I nodded once, waiting. The silence stretched. "But," he continued, tone sliding into the syrupy condescension of a guidance counselor breaking bad news, "we're shifting focus from individual heroism to team excellence." I felt something in my jaw tighten. He went on. "So, rather than a traditional bonus, we've decided to invest that pool into upskilling and culture building. Think leadership coaching, cross-functional pods, maybe even a dev retreat." A retreat, after I just saved their supply chain from collapsing like a Jenga tower in a wind tunnel? I looked down at the notebook in my lap. The top line just read, LOL. "And the whole licensing thing," he added, waving vaguely at a separate sheet in front of him, one of the invoices I'd sent months ago for the annual renewal of my auto-scheduling module. "We really need to move past that mentality. You're not some kind of greedy tech landlord, right?" He said it with a chuckle, like it was a joke, like he hadn't just described the entire mechanism that kept the routing engine from going into cardiac arrest during peak volume season. The renewal was labeled clearly, Annual Module License, Vendor of Record, My Name LLC, EIN ... 2179, paid, processed, cleared by finance.
I closed the notebook, stood up. "That's all?" I asked. "Don't be upset," Derek said, like he was offering me emotional clarity. "This is about building something sustainable. We're all in the same boat." I didn't reply, just nodded, turned, walked out. My hands were shaking, not from rage, but from the precise surgical calm of knowing exactly what I was going to do. First thing, I opened the folder on my desktop labeled License Recon. It wasn't a rage folder, it was a blueprint. Every module I'd written over the past 4 years, tracked, timestamped, annotated. I started adding comments, chain of authorship notes, Git log digests, file hashes. I pulled the invoice history from finance, highlighted every entry with Vendor, My Name LLC, and dropped them into a zip folder titled Proof of Use Year 1, Year 4. Next, I drafted a licensing amendment. Nothing dramatic, just a clean clause buried halfway through. In the event of material change of control, all license rights must be renegotiated with vendor. One line, easily missed, entirely enforceable. I wasn't trying to burn them, not yet. I just wanted to make sure that if they ever sold this duct tape disaster of a company, the buyer would know who actually owned the engine under the hood. Derek thought he slapped me with some petty team-building bullshit. What he actually did was hand me the clearest, coldest justification I needed to turn quiet resentment into leverage. I didn't yell, I didn't write a nasty email, I just ordered new business cards for my LLC, white on black, embossed, and below my name, one line, Proprietary Systems Engineer, license required. The lawyer's office was sandwiched between a laundromat and a vape shop, and the receptionist offered me stale peppermints with nicotine-stained fingers. Perfect. I didn't want sleek. I wanted quiet, bulletproof, boring. The kind of lawyer who printed every email and used phrases like chain of custody and adverse inference without blinking. He was late, of course, Walked in with a thermos and a corduroy blazer like he'd time-traveled from 1993 and never got the memo that startups weren't supposed to be messy anymore. His name was Joel, and he didn't ask why I was there until I handed him the first folder, labeled in all caps, Intellectual Property, Pre-Employment Works plus Module Architecture. He flipped through it for 20 silent minutes, then finally asked, "They paid you as a contractor?" "No," I said, "full-time W-2, but they renewed the modules under my LLC every year." "And this clause," he tapped the highlighted line in my offer letter, the one about prior works remain mine, "this was never superseded." "Nope." He smiled without warmth. "You've got something here." That was the moment I felt it. Not relief, not vengeance, but pressure, like realizing the lock you installed years ago actually held when the break-in came. I wasn't safe, but I had time, and that was everything. Joel helped me draft the Schedule of Exceptions, an itemized list of all prior created modules, algorithms, API endpoints, and non-assigned IP assets. We printed it, notarized it, sealed it in a fireproof envelope, and mailed a certified copy to my own LLC's P.O. box with a chain of custody log clipped inside. I even filmed myself signing it with a time-stamped news broadcast playing in the background. If that sounds paranoid, you've never been gaslit by a corporate lawyer holding a 7-figure incentive clause and a short memory.
After that, I got technical. Real technical. I cloned the core repos to a private offline vault, ran SHA-256 hashes on every file, sent the digest to myself through a third-party time-stamping service, and saved the receipts in triplicate. I wrote a README like it was gospel, which lines of code were mine before employment, which modules were licensed, which functions were modular replacements. No opinion, just facts. Code doesn't lie. People do. Then I split the modules into clean, portable packages, each labeled with versioning, license terms, and my LLC's name embedded in the metadata. No kill switch, no malware, just lawful walls where there used to be implied bridges. I checked the license keys, each one tethered to a heartbeat ping, all routing through my vendor server. They could still run everything, nothing would break, but from now on, every system they touched would quietly whisper my name. Meanwhile, Derek was busy playing visionary. Every Slack update was about streamlining org posture and positioning for acceleration. He started dropping hints, investor calls, exploratory partnerships, pre-merger audits. Then came the big one, a breathless all hands with one slide on the screen. Project Apex, a $645 million deal in motion. I watched from the back of the room while he grinned like a man who just stapled wings to a pig and called it a drone. He kept saying things like, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and nothing can stop this. The CFO nodded, the CEO smiled. Everyone clapped. My inbox exploded with irrelevant threads about data rooms and asset sheets. I didn't respond. I opened a new calendar event titled Trigger Prep and set it for 6 weeks out, right before the board's final vote. No one asked me to help with diligence. No one remembered I existed. But they were still pinging my license servers every 6 minutes, and every single ping was a heartbeat I owned. The consultants showed up in navy blue vests and $1,000 shoes, their lanyards swinging like dog tags. You could smell the Bain or Deloitte or whatever brand they were cologne before they even tapped into the Wi-Fi. They came armed with buzzwords, data room links, and clipboards they didn't need, flipping through paper like it meant something. They weren't here to understand the system. They were here to check boxes until the spreadsheet turned green and everyone got paid. I watched them work like a polite ghost, quiet, smiling, cooperative, answered every question they asked with just enough precision to seem helpful, never enough to trigger a second glance. Yes, that's our main scheduling engine. No, we haven't had downtime since the Q3 patch. It auto-reconciles invoice exceptions daily. Last manual override was 6 months ago. All true, all irrelevant. What they didn't ask? Who owns it? They assumed, everyone always does, that if it runs on company servers, it must belong to the company. That if I'm salaried, I'm theirs. That if it's invisible, it's free. So when one of the suits waved a thumb at the routing dashboard and said, "That's yours, right?" the director of ops just nodded. "Yeah, it's proprietary, all in-house."
I sipped my coffee. Didn't even blink. The master services agreement sat in the shared drive like a trap no one bothered to read. I'd redlined it 6 months ago when they tried to roll all vendors into a new framework. One clause buried mid-document. Any assignment of third-party IP rights during a material change of control requires written consent from the vendor of record. No one objected. They probably thought I'd copy-pasted it from boilerplate. They probably didn't even see the signature line. My name, owner, and my LLC. A few weeks after that, I quietly disabled auto-renew on the module licenses, set it to manual review. The key still worked, but in the admin dashboard, my dashboard, each entry now showed a blinking note, renewal required upon change of control. You'd have to click 3 times and scroll past the usage logs to even notice it. No one did. The diligence crew didn't look under rocks. They were too busy checking expiring patents, cap tables, brand marks, and media rights. They reviewed the open source disclosures, found nothing alarming, and rubber-stamped the internal IP as clean. Legal added a summary in the data room titled, "All tech assets equal work for hire." Cute. I printed a copy, highlighted that line in pink, and taped it to my fridge. Next to it, I stuck the license key screen with the renewal dates aligned to the board vote. They were sprinting toward the cliff. All gas, no brakes, and I was the one holding the map with "Bridge Out" scribbled across the ravine. The CEO paraded around like a man who'd already cashed his equity, talking to buyers in half sentences and backroom laughter. The board scheduled their final sign-off for a Friday, 3 weeks out, timed perfectly for end of quarter press. The merger was a done deal, they said. No drama, no blockers. Meanwhile, I started taking long lunches and clearing my weekends. People thought I was finally relaxing. I was actually just making space, because when a train's going full speed off a cliff, there's only one thing you need to do. Step off the track and wait for gravity to notice. The integration whiteboard was still wet with marker ink when I walked past the war room. It wasn't even locked, just wide open, full of diagrams like a treasure map made by people too confident to use pencil. 3 consultants hunched over it like it was sacred scripture. At the center of the mess, one name kept popping up. The core modules. My modules. Routing, reconciliation, inventory prediction, vendor resolution. They'd built the entire merger plan assuming those systems were rock solid, long-term, and theirs. Spoiler, they weren't. Later that day, I clicked through a few internal dev tickets. Nothing urgent, just checking who had eyes on what. The new buyer's tech lead had started poking around the repo forks, requesting API documentation for post-close implementation continuity. That phrase alone told me everything I needed to know. They weren't going to rebuild anything. They were going to drop my code into their stack like a Lego block and pray it didn't melt. So, I opened the sealed envelope in my desk drawer, the one with the notarized schedule of exceptions, Jules' signature, and the time-stamped license terms. Everything still clean, legal, current. I reviewed the clause again. Upon material change of control, all licenses revert to manual negotiation. No wiggle room, no autopilot. Then I opened my draft folder and found the unsent email to buyer counsel. Subject, chain of title clarification. Body, please find attached the vendor license summary and asset origin breakdown for critical infrastructure modules as referenced in Schedule A of your integration packet. Attached was the matrix. File by file, module by module, proof of authorship, prior use, renewal invoices, and a single line in bold. license renewal key valid until board vote date. I didn't send it. Not yet. I uploaded a copy to a secure vault, flagged it as send upon event, close vote passed, and went back to work like nothing happened. That week, Derek, still riding high on his imaginary parade float, sent out a chipper Slack update, excited to announce board vote is locked for Friday at 3 p.m. Let's get ready to pop the champagne. I added a 3:15 p.m. calendar block to my day. Title: Execute. 2 days later, he called an all hands, told us, with the tone of a man who just had a great round of golf, that there would be no bonuses this cycle. Something, lean into reinvestment, aligned priorities, long-term equity, blah, blah, blah. That word cycle hung in the air like a challenge. No bonuses this cycle. Fine, let's talk cycles. Like the license key that auto-expires in a cycle of 365 days unless renewed. Like the invoice cycle that logs every payment from their finance tool straight to my LLC ledger. Like the merger cycle, now days from closing, built entirely on tech no one legally owns. That night, I updated the license key, regenerated a fresh one with a new hash, and tied it to a conditional renewal trigger. I moved it into escrow with a timestamp, delivery clause, and just for fun, a screenshot of Derek's no bonuses email.
I wasn't angry. I was ready. There's a difference between holding a grudge and pulling a pin. One festers, the other clears the board. And I wasn't trying to explode anything. I was just making damn sure that when the clock struck 3:15, they'd hear the click. It started with calendar silence. One by one, I stopped getting invites. No more architecture stand-ups, no platform status meetings, no integration syncs with the buyer's tech team. My name disappeared from the shared whiteboards. Threads I'd started in Slack went unanswered. Even my GitHub notifications slowed to a trickle. I wasn't fired, I wasn't reprimanded, I was just peeled away, layer by layer. The system still ran, the modules still pinged, but I'd become a ghost in my own codebase. Then came the access change. I logged into the deployment console and saw my role had quietly shifted from admin to viewer. No alert, no explanation. I clicked into permissions, grayed out. Tried to escalate a ticket, error message. I still had root access through my vendor server, of course, but they didn't know that. Or maybe they did, and figured if they boxed me out long enough, I'd fold, or fade, or throw a tantrum they could use as cause.
I didn't fold. I downloaded the logs. Every permission change, every audit trail, every access downgrade. Timestamped, archived, unedited. HR didn't even pretend to hide it. One internal memo, half-baked and riddled with typos, included my name under third-party contractors receiving internal platform access. Not employee, not contributor, contractor. It even listed my LLC and vendor ID. I printed that memo, framed it right next to the payment ledger from finance showing quarterly disbursements to my EIN. Line item, annual module license, vendor payment cleared. I wasn't just removed from the table. I was being pre-written out of history. Quietly, so I couldn't scream. Strategically, so they could cut me out post-close and claim ignorance. It wasn't personal, it was procedural. And that's what made it so surgical. Friends in the org started pinging me on Signal. Little messages. Hey, just heard they're trying to restructure platform ops post-close. You okay? You're not on the latest deck. Be careful, Derek's talking like you're already gone. Each message landed like a pebble in my ribs. I'd been their ghost, their patch, their failsafe. I'd kept the ship afloat while they chased headlines. And now they were trying to scrape my name off the hull before the buyer showed up with a pen. Careful, one friend whispered.
They're calling you difficult in close circles. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was expected. Difficult is what they call the quiet woman who keeps receipts. Difficult is code for she knows we screwed her and she didn't roll over. Let them call me the villain. I already had the script, the timestamp, the cast list, and the exit cue. The board vote was in 5 days. I blocked out a 30-minute slot on my calendar. Private, no title, just one word. Send. Let them spin the narrative. Let them cut me from decks and mute my credentials. That only works if the paper's blank. But mine wasn't blank. Mine had signatures. And every system that still pinged still called home to the same place. Me. The boardroom erupted into that brand of champagne-clinking Slack emoji applause that only comes when men believe their money just made more money. Derek was grinning like he'd just been knighted, spinning buzzwords about strategic acceleration and multi-market positioning. The CEO raised a glass and said, "To the future," as if he hadn't spent the last 6 months ignoring the engine keeping the whole machine alive. 3 consultants stood near the door, already texting flight confirmations. The buyer's legal team smiled like wolves in suits, one eye on the closing packet, the other on the equity cliff they just inherited. Everyone was vibrating with the tension of a room where the ink is about to dry and no one's brave enough to breathe wrong. That's when I clicked send. No speech, no stunt, just one quiet email to 2 inboxes. Buyer counsel and the board alias. Subject, continuity terms. Immediate body, attached. Please find the schedule of exceptions for all modules currently licensed by my LLC name, including origin trail, renewal terms, and chain of title clarification for assets in use across the routing, reconciliation, and vendor resolution platforms as outlined in the standing license agreement. All rights are non-transferable and require renegotiation upon material change of control.
Attachments, 5 files. The notarized schedule of exceptions, the annotated license history, the current key set to expire at 3:59 p.m., a PDF of the HR memo listing me as a third-party vendor, and a screenshot of the finance ledger showing quarterly payments to my LLC. I stood from my desk at home, not triumphant, just complete. The kind of stillness you get after jumping off the edge and finding out you built wings on the way down. On the other side of that boardroom Zoom, I watched the moment the email hit. You could see the micro freeze, the CEO's face mid-toast, smile curdling at the corners. Derek blinked like he lost a thought. Legal leaned in, mouse moving to click, then click again. Someone on the buyer's side shifted uncomfortably, lips tightening. The CEO lowered his glass. Is this serious? His general counsel didn't look up. Who owns the technology? Silence. The kind that drips one drop at a time, slower than the panic crawling up a CFO's spine. Wasn't it developed internally? Someone asked, uselessly. No, legal muttered, eyes still scanning. These are third-party licenses, her LLC. Tam-stamped, paid, versioned. She never assigned them. Another voice. Can we push the vote? Counsel snapped. Not unless you want to breach disclosure. Meanwhile, my dashboard showed the pings. Every module, every heartbeat still running, but now each one flagged. License key expiring. 28 minutes remaining. No outage, no threat, just a clean, legal expiration date and a black and white clause that said, your future doesn't start until you deal with the person you erased. And I wasn't mad. I was available. Terms pending. Derek was the first to speak. Of course he was. The man couldn't pass a mirror without issuing a press release. He leaned forward, voice just a bit too loud for the Zoom mic, and said, "This is all a misunderstanding. That code was developed on company time on company machines. It's clearly company IP." I didn't even flinch, just clicked a folder open on my desktop, dragged 4 PDFs into the chat window, and said evenly,
Let's walk through it. Document 1. My original offer letter. Highlighted clause near the bottom above my signature. All prior works remain the sole intellectual property of the employee unless explicitly assigned. Document 2. The copyright certificate framed on my wall, now framed in their problem, dated before my start date, includes the module architecture, naming conventions, hash digest, and authorship log. Document 3. The license renewal invoices yearly, labeled with the vendor of record M-Name LLC, paid, logged, received by their own AP system. Document 4. The assignment clause from their own master services agreement. In the event of a material change of control, any third-party licensed IP must be renegotiated with vendor. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. This is extortion. No, I said calmly. This is documentation. He turned to legal. Say something.
Their general counsel just stared at the screen like it had personally betrayed him. She owns it. The buyer's side went quiet. Then one of their junior lawyers, probably the only one in that room who actually read attachments, typed directly into the Zoom chat, "We need continuity, not pride. Can you license to us directly?" I smiled, not with joy, with precision. So I unmuted, looked straight into the camera, and laid out the terms. 1. The bonus I was promised in Q3, plus back pay for the module's usage outside the original scope. That's 4 years across 3 business units. I have the logs. 2. Attribution. My name on every system using my code, internal or external, I don't care, but I won't be scrubbed from my own architecture. 3. I want the seat Derek thinks he deserves. If you want continuity, you'll need someone who actually knows how this house was built. And I'm not doing this through middlemen anymore. Derek sputtered. You can't just... I cut in. 4. Derek's out. No exceptions. Either the license comes directly through me, or you negotiate a fresh build from scratch. Ask your tech lead how long that'll take. Silence again. Then the buyer's lead counsel leaned forward. If she holds the chain of title and the modules are material, we renegotiate with her. Period. Someone from the board whispered, hot-mic'd and distant, Jesus Christ. I looked back at my own screen, calm. The timer on the license key pinged again. 15 minutes remaining. My dashboard flashed gently. Pending renewal. Signature required. The thing is, I never wanted a war. I wanted a conversation. But they chose silence. They chose spin. They tried to box me out and dress up theft as vision. So now they'd have to buy their future from the person they tried to erase. And I wasn't giving discounts. The closed session took 22 minutes. I know, because I timed it. The board came back on camera tight-lipped, blinking slower, like their skin didn't quite fit anymore. The CEO's voice cracked just slightly as he read the motion. Derek Holland's employment will conclude effective immediately. We thank him for his contributions. No Q&A, no further comments, just a polite digital execution. The buyer's team didn't waste a second. Their general counsel forwarded a new agreement, direct license, signed, timestamped, and retroactive to my original filing date. My LLC listed in the title chain, attribution clause baked in. Renewal terms locked for 5 years at a figure that made up for every stale sheep cake and vanished bonus they ever dangled like a carrot over a pit. And in the footer of the deal memo, one line that made the whole war worth it. Continuity contact. My full name, Principal Systems Engineer, Independent. I signed. The modules kept pinging. The merger closed. No system outage, no headlines, just quiet compliance. Then I opened my company's Slack, went to my profile, and clicked deactivate. No goodbye thread, no passive-aggressive sign-off, just silence. I was done. Not angry,
not smug. Finished. The severance came in wire form the next morning. I redirected a slice of it, 7 figures, into an earmarked retention bonus fund through the buyer's HR team. Quiet, no names attached, just a memo to the engineers who kept the lights on. It wasn't mercy. It was insurance. You don't poison the soil you once had to farm, but you don't leave it unguarded either. On my last day, the CEO emailed me personally. Short, cautious, a thin attempt at grace. Appreciate your professionalism throughout this process. If there's anything we can do to ease the transition. I replied with a link to the updated license dashboard and one line. Access requests now route through me. They never responded, but they never tried to access anything without approval again. I walked out with my keys in my pocket, my name in the paperwork, and no one above me who could silence what I'd built. They wanted me invisible. Now they see my watermark everywhere.